Actually, got Ted Cruz with you on it.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you so much
Well, see,
for
I could have got more.
braving to get out and
Made
hang
that
out.
for you.
That we're-
But you can have that one for your collection.
My name is Jan Farrar, most of you know me. I'm the current chair of the Cape County Tea Party. And again, welcome. I'm going to turn it over. Enos Criddle is going to be our MC for tonight. And from there, thank you.
Well, welcome everyone again, and let's start out with our prayer. And Linda, what's up with that?
Father, we first want to thank you for the continued blessings bestowed on us. Also, we want to ask your forgiveness in all the areas where we have failed to live by your truth. Bless this group assembled here who are so concerned about the direction of our country. Help us to gently communicate with others and our leaders that yes, indeed, this is a Christian nation founded on the truth of the Bible. We will show love in our disputes, but we should stand up for our beliefs. This takes strength, and we ask for that strength through the glorious Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
And then next, we'll go to our pledge. We'll lead us in prayer.
I remind you, veterans, hand salute is appropriate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone can be seated. Thank you. Next, before we get started, we'd like to recognize any elected officials that may be in the room. I see we have Don here in the back. In addition to our speaker today, is there anyone else I've missed? Any other office holders? Okay. All right then. And then next we need to talk about, we have some items for sale on the back table back there. So if anyone's interested in the items there, we also have raffle tickets for both the gun as well as the 50-50 drawing. If you're interested in that, up right back here, the old number tickets if you're interested. Oh, you have some?
That's the raffle, I've got the gun.
All right.
Raffle.
We have a sign-up sheet. Is that back there?
It's right here.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I want to pass that around. If anyone wants to provide us some contact information, if you're interested, please feel.
Anyone that'd like to be on our list, please put your name and
Is there anybody
email
here who's
address.
not on our list?
Yeah, I know a lot of recognize a lot of faces in here tonight, so
Yeah. All right.
just in case I missed someone, I don't want to miss anyone. And we have bi-weekly meetings of our group, and if you're interested in attending that, please contact one of the persons in the back of the room, let them know that you'd be interested in that. We can provide you the dates and times that we meet for that as well. And self-governance. Just something to be known as self-determined man, determined by his own personal liberty, exercising the civic responsibility and civic authority to control instituted government. Missouri Article 1, Section 1, all power is vested in and is derived from the people. So always keep that in mind. It's the people in charge in governance. There's faculty training. And I don't know if you really want to, some people may not know that acronym.
There's a lot of different trainings, how to step up and use your utilize your civic authority. This weekend, Saturday in Camdenton, Missouri, there is faculty training. It's Foundations for Applied Conservative Leadership, and it begins at 8 a.m. If you're interested in traveling over, you do need to sign up online. If you'd like more information, we have some information back here.
And then your money is greatly appreciated. I wanted to.
If anyone needs 50-50 drawing tickets, please hold your hand up and I'll bring them around.
And we're passing around the teapot for anybody who would like to help out the Cape County Tea Party, make a donation. You can do so by passing around, put something in there. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started with our introduction for our speaker tonight. So, our guest speaker this month is Representative Todd Richardson. He's the current Speaker of the House. Speaker Richardson represents part of Butler County, including the City of Poplar Bluff and the port of Dunklin County, part of Dunklin County, including the City of Malden, District 152, in the Missouri House of Representatives. He was elected to his first two-year term in November 2010. He served as the House Majority Leader for the 98th General Assembly and now serves as Speaker of the House. In addition to his legislative duties, Speaker Richardson is a practicing attorney in Poplar Bluff. He previously served as the primary liaison for state-level government relations at the University of Memphis and as an adjunct instructor at Three Rivers College, teaching business law and national and state government classes. He received his BA in political communications from the University of Memphis in 2004 and obtained his JD from the University of Memphis in 2007, with honors and at the top of his class. As a law student, State Representative Richardson led the university to the finals of the National Moot Court Competition and was recognized for outstanding advocacy and trial skills. He was also selected by his peers to give the commencement at his graduation. Representative Richardson currently lives in Poplar Bluff with his wife Amber. They have a son, Sawyer, and a daughter, Riley. They are members of the First Christian Church in Poplar Bluff, where he serves on the board. The 2015 legislative session was anything but dull. Many changes are taking place, and he is just the one to tell us about them. He will fill us in on what to expect in the 2016 session also. Please join us for a very informative night and learn more about the legislative process.
Thank you all very, very much for having me. It's always nice to be back in Cape. This is where I was born and where my parents lived till I was about 6, so it's always a treat for me to get back. Thank you for the very kind introduction. Anytime somebody pulls out that entire bio and reads it, it always embarrasses me a little bit, but my wife will remind me when I get home tonight that while I may be the Speaker of the Missouri House, I am not the Speaker of our House. She'll probably have a list of chores for me to do, which will have a way of humbling me after that very kind introduction. I want to be fairly brief in my remarks to you tonight, and what I'd really like the opportunity to do is hear what's on your mind and allow you all the opportunity to ask me anything you want, whether it be about the past legislative session or what I expect in the coming session. It's great to see two of my colleagues here tonight, Representative Lichtenegger and Representative Swan. We have especially in the Missouri House, we have to operate as a team. In order to get things done, we have to rely on a collection of people all pulling in the same direction, and both Donna and Kathy are both big parts of that team. What I want to talk to you a little bit about is where I see the direction of the Missouri House and more broadly the Missouri General Assembly. I don't think anybody who watched the legislature over the last year saw a public institution or a public body in a particularly good light. And I'm not going to recount all of the things that took place last legislative session, but from start to finish, it was certainly a tumultuous and historic time to be in the House of Representatives and the legislature more broadly. What I think is most important for us to do in the coming months is to begin the process of delivering you all the kind of legislature that you deserve. The first substantive act of the Missouri House next session is going to be to pass substantive, meaningful ethics reform. We're going to have it out of the House during the first, probably the second week of the legislative session. The reason I think that's important is it's the foundation of what we do. The public's trust and confidence in us as an institution is important. It's important not only that you have confidence in it, but it's important to the actual substance of what we do. So we're going to spend a good bit of time at the beginning of this legislative session trying to create that better environment in Jefferson City. It's an honor to be the Speaker when we have the largest Republican majority in the history of the state. There are 116 Republicans in the Missouri House now. But as Missouri is a diverse state, when you elect 116 Republicans from a state as diverse as Missouri is, you can elect a lot of different kinds of Republicans. And we don't agree on every issue. But we're united, I think, in a common mission to try to move Missouri in a better direction. We're united in a common mission to try to deal with a governor who has been the antithesis of leadership. This governor has been overridden 82 times. And to put that into context, that's more than double the amount that every other governor in the history of the state has been overridden combined. Now that's a governor who's not exercising leadership. What we've seen just this past week, not to mention what we've seen over the last year, represents a dramatic lack of executive leadership. And in that vacuum, we want the legislature to be a place of sanity and common sense. And that's the kind of leadership I hope to provide in the Speaker's office. We have big issues and challenges facing this state and this country, and that's not something I have to tell anybody in this room. But I'm confident, as big as our challenges are, we as a country and a state have not lost the capacity to solve them. As frustrated as I get when I turn on the nightly news, I refuse to believe that the response is to throw up our hands and say, we can't fix these things, because we can't. This is a nation that has faced far greater problems than we're facing today, and we've managed to fix the problems. So I think with your help, with the collective help of my fellow colleagues in the House and the Senate and the state, we're going to be able to do a good job of pushing Missouri in the right direction. Does that mean we're going to fix every problem overnight? Of course not. Does that mean that people in this room will agree with everything we do? I am sure that that will not be the case. But I do think if you look back at the body of work over the 5 years that I've had the opportunity to serve in the Missouri House, we have a pretty good legislative track record. We've cut taxes. We've reduced welfare. We've cut our budget in critical areas that it needs to be cut while making investments in areas that need investment. We've been able to reduce bureaucracy, and we've been able to do some substantive tort reform. Those are all important things to put the state in a better place than it was without. All of us in a term-limited environment, and term limits is something that I've come to support. My wife supports it more than I do, because she wants me to come home soon. But we all get a brief time to serve in the Missouri legislature. I want to make sure that when I'm finished with the 8 years that I have the opportunity to serve, that I can look back and I can say the effort was worth it. We were able to accomplish some things, and we were able to move the state in a better direction. And then we'll turn it over to somebody else, and it'll be their opportunity to stand on that stage and to try to move Missouri in a better direction. So I want to thank you all for the opportunity to serve. I want to thank my colleagues for the great opportunity and the honor to be the Speaker of the House. It's something that very few people in our history have done. It's something that very few people who live as far from Jefferson City as I do have had the opportunity to do. There's, in fact, only been one Speaker of the House in the history of our state who has a further drive to the Capitol than I do. And he was also Speaker from Butler County, who happened to live about a half a mile south of where I live now. So his drive wasn't all that much further. So I thank you for that honor. I thank you for the chance to be here tonight. And I'd love to hear what's on your mind.
We have a few prepared questions.
Yeah, we
for
have
her.
had some prepared questions that people have sent to us. The first and foremost is, what is your position on the refugees coming into Missouri, and how can we fight that? And will you?
Yeah, well, absolutely, we will and we are. Is the short answer to your question. It's an issue we've been dealing with in my office all day today. And unfortunately, Governor Nixon has not joined the, I believe, 30 other governors who have said they are not going to assist the administration in resettling those refugees here. I sent a letter to Governor Nixon today, along with the signature, I believe, of over 80 of my colleagues in the House. The only reason we didn't have more is because they didn't get time to get their signatures in. They called on Nixon to suspend any assistance that Missouri has provided to the federal government in those resettlements until we get sufficient satisfaction that there's a proper and secure vetting process in place. The United States has a rich history of welcoming immigrants, and particularly people who are persecuted for religious reasons. That's part of the reason our country was founded. And so I don't think anybody's unsympathetic to the plight of people trying to flee the brutality of ISIS. But I think for our safety and security, it is certainly reasonable for us to demand that there's at least some semblance of an adequate vetting process in place before we welcome those people to the United States, and specifically to Missouri. Now, there are going to be serious questions as to what legal authority we have to push back against the administration should they continue to do it. But we're willing to push the envelope as far as we can, and we'll be in continued contacts and conversations with not only fellow House members, but members of the Senate. I'm meeting with the President Pro Tem of the Senate tomorrow. This is one of the items on the agenda, and we'll be back in legislative session in very short order. So we're willing to consider any range of options that we can find that are practical to try to put Missouri in the same place that 30 other states have found themselves in.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
St. Louis has already volunteered to take them.
Yeah, the mayor of St. Louis has certainly not been in the same position that we are, and there are, to this point, about 20, I believe 27 Syrian refugees from the latest round that have been resettled. The bulk of those have been in St. Louis. And I don't disagree with the mayor's position that we ought to be welcoming and compassionate, but I do disagree with the mayor that we ought to be welcoming and compassionate in the face of the kind of threat that we're looking at right now, and without better security. So that's something that we'll just have to agree to disagree with the mayor.
And most all of them are Muslims, they won't let the Christians even get a chance to.
I think the number I saw today was out of the about 1,700 Syrian immigrants who have come here. There are fewer than 100 of them that are Christian. You've certainly seen a lot of conversation on that front on the national stage today.
Were you aware today that the governor had stated that it is Homeland Security's responsibility to vet any refugees coming into the state?
Yeah.
Basically passing the football so when the poo-poo hits the fan, he has somebody to blame.
He made that statement yesterday, and I think if you look at the totality of Nixon's statement, it's pretty typical Jay Nixon. It's not something that on the face of it, he's probably factually accurate. Ultimately, the Department of State and Homeland Security are going to be the people that make the decision. They have the constitutional authority to decide questions of immigration under both the Constitution and the Act that Congress passed back in 1980. But that doesn't answer the ultimate question. The ultimate question is whether that process is sufficient that we as a state want to assist the federal government in those resettlement efforts. And that's really the ultimate question for the state. I very much hope that our counterparts in Congress will take a very hard look at this president's policy. And I think there's some efforts to do that. But the governor has once again taken and tried to twist the issue and say nothing about what the state's role really is.
But on the flip side of that, are you guys willing to look at what the other governors that don't want any refugees, because I know there's a lot of people in here that don't want refugees here.
Yeah.
Because we don't trust an outside entity vetting these individuals to come into our states.
Yeah,
We don't.
as I said from the start, we're willing to consider all of the available range of options to us as a state. And I think the leadership that we're seeing by other governors in more conservative states will be instructive into how we proceed. But this is going to have to be something where ultimately, to stop this and to make sure that there is a better screening process in place, is something that the federal government's going to have to step up and take some responsibility for as well. Because once you allow refugees into the United States and grant them legal status, they're free to move wherever they want. And I think there's a news report out of Louisiana already today with some refugees that were relocated there that nobody knows where they went.
They're gone.
That's part of the problem we face. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to interject a bit of history. Some of us might remember the Vietnamese and Thai boat people. Immediately after the Vietnam War, there were thousands and thousands of refugees at that time. Where did they end up? They ended up in Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, until they were fully vetted, sleeping in the barracks, being provided for. And what did America get for it? We got good American citizens that make good Vietnamese food.
Well, I think
This is quite a different group of people.
Yeah, it's quite different, but then
That's
Fort
why we have a
Chaffee is an
different
option.
ideology.
what the
That was
administration's
humans at Fort Chaffee.
what the administration's tried to do is they've tried to create a false choice.
Yeah.
And they've tried to act like the only two options here are to welcome these immigrants with these refugees with open arms, or you're not compassionate. Those are the two options the administration has tried to take. Important to remember here, we're talking about millions who are trying to flee Syria right now, millions. The Obama administration is talking about allowing 10,000 of them into the United States. That's not going to do anything to address the global refugee crisis present in Syria. If the administration wants to address this problem, we ought to get to the root of dealing with ISIS. The president and his foreign policy have left a vacuum in the region that have allowed radical Islam to spring up and take hold. And if we're going to deal with this problem long term, we're going to have to deal with the root of it. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I believe in compassion too, but we have taken a lot of people illegally. They're all over this country. Nobody's vetting anybody. Our personal, all our rights are being trampled on by our government. That's one. Number two, We have so many unemployed people. Who's paying for all this? That's what I wanna know. There you go.
The answer to the second part is
Right.
around the room.
Right, exactly.
And I think you bring up a good point. We're being asked now to trust an immigration system that's fundamentally broken. And whether we're talking about Syria or we're talking about any other phase of our immigration policy. Our legal immigration policy doesn't work very well, and certainly, we do not have a Department of Homeland Security that's done anything to secure the border.
No.
So I think it's a stretch for those that want to ask us to trust now that same apparatus and system to have fully vetted these refugees.
And how far in debt are we? And our banks are
Number
gonna.
grows every day.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am?
I really don't think our immigration system is broken. I believe it's not being allowed to function as it's supposed to by law. And all you have to do is ask any of the ICE agents down along the border about that. They're not
They're not being
allowed to do
allowed.
their job.
Yeah. I mean, there are some things that I think need to be changed with our immigration law on the federal level, but the fundamental problem is we're not enforcing the laws. You cannot have any discussion about what immigration reform looks like until you first secure the border. And that's a combination of things. I think there needs to be some more security measures put into place along the border, meaning probably some strategic places where we're gonna build a wall, and we need to let our immigration enforcement officers do their job. Yes, ma'am?
I think that this looks to me like the federal government wants to get in our police departments, and they want to bring people here who are going to stir up trouble, and we're going to end up with martial law, and that's how Obama's going to take our weapons.
Well, I certainly hope that's not.
Well, I hope it
Not-
isn't
not
either,
the
but I
case.
don't want to live on hope.
And I think this is an area where people are gonna have to be vigilant as to what the federal policy is. And we're gonna have to be doing everything we can as a state to position ourselves to not be the recipient of the kinds of bad actors that we've seen in other parts of the world. And I don't think, there's not gonna be a guarantee we're gonna be able to keep those bad actors out. That's just the reality.
Well, how can we get our Second Amendment not to go away with an executive order like everything else?
Well, I think the Obama administration, should they try to do that, is going to be met with a pretty fierce and severe opposition.
Well,
This is on a
Nobody's
state,
held him accountable for anything he's done against our Constitution
on a
so
state
far.
level, we have some of the strongest Second Amendment protections in place. I think you are, be absolutely confident that you're not going to see that effort, certainly as long as the current political makeup in Jeff City is the way it is, that you can see anything out of the state level restricting that Second Amendment. Ultimately, though, what we're going to have to guard against that, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, right? So
That is true.
I don't know what the future holds on that front, but I know protecting those rights and doing everything we can to stop encroachment on them ought to be a paramount priority.
Okay, the second question. There's a House Bill 1033 by Mike Boone to try to stop abortion in Missouri. With the climate of Planned Parenthood, people being repulsed by that, if there's ever a time that we can actually get a pro-life bill or an anti-abortion bill through the House, it is now. Now, I realize with our governor, it would be...
Our governor's not an impediment on this issue. We have a supermajority. I talk about us having some diversity within our Republican caucus. On issues regarding life, we are absolutely 100% united as a caucus. And I think we're continuing to push the envelope every day on what we can do in this space. Since the Republicans took the majority in 2002, we've gone from there being, I think on the order of about 15 abortion clinics in the state, down to 2 today. 2. That's a remarkable trajectory. Our goal ultimately is to end every single abortion in the state, which is why when things like Planned Parenthood and the University of Missouri come up, we're going to take swift action to expose what they're doing and try to prevent our tax dollars from going to support that kind of organization. So things like the 72-hour waiting period, which we work very hard to get in the law. I know Representative Swan has worked on things requiring more regular inspections and to treat these clinics like the surgical facilities they are. Those efforts have been very important in making it difficult, setting a high bar if you want to try to perform an abortion in the state. So I'm not sure exactly what's in Representative Moon's bill. I can tell by the bill number that it was one that was filed very, very late because it means it was the 1,033rd bill that was filed last year. But we're going to continue to push the envelope on that. We've had great success over the last several years in getting that legislation through.
Now, we have petitions around here, we're trying to get signatures. Does that help
Yes.
you in Jefferson
Oh,
City know that?
There's no question about it. I think sometimes people get the sense, and maybe it's true on a federal level, I don't know, but they get the sense that input from people back home doesn't matter. Let me tell you, somebody who's been there 5 years, it absolutely matters. When you guys work to show for issues, particularly back home in people's district, it makes a big impact to how we view issues. So those efforts certainly help.
I'll go ahead and just, if you don't mind, to let you know what's in Representative Moon's bill. It is working to change the Missouri Statute 1.205.1 from stating, "The life of each human being begins at conception," and secondly, "Unborn children have protectable interests in life, health, and well-being." Change that to, the first one, "The life of each human person begins at conception." And then secondly, "As all persons, unborn children, have protectable interests in life, health, and well-being." And I think that goes along with personhood.
Right.
So we have petitions available and copies of it. It's an online. If anybody's interested in taking that out into your own communities, meet with me and I'll get you that.
We have it back
information.
here to sign it.
And we have back here to sign as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, another question that came up is, are we going to see right to work tried again?
Are you going to see it tried again?
Uh-huh.
Absolutely, you're going to see it tried again. We've seen remarkable progression on this issue in a very short period of time. When I got elected to the House back in 2011, if you come to the legislature and said, "Hey, Missouri's going to be a right to work state," people would have laughed at you. The first time anybody since 1978, the state put it on the ballot, and right to work was defeated by a margin of roughly 64. The next time after 1978 that anybody in the state of Missouri got the chance to vote on right to work was in 2014, when the Missouri House took a vote on it. 2014, we had 78 votes in favor of right to work. Fast forward about 12 months later, a little less than that, about 10, and we had 92 votes on it in the House. Fast forward a few months after that to veto session just this past September, we had 96 votes. We needed 109. If we had a Republican governor that supported right to work would be the law of the land in this state in a matter of weeks. But until that happens, we're going to continue to try to build the legislative support to pass it even with the governor's veto. I think it's important policy. Look at the states that surround Missouri, and look at the states that don't necessarily border Missouri, but are considered traditional competitors with Missouri. States like Indiana and Michigan and Wisconsin. All of those states in the last several years have gained a competitive advantage over Missouri in the manufacturing space. If we hope to attract and retain and grow good manufacturing jobs in this state, right to work is going to be an important part of it. And it doesn't mean, and it very much bristles me at the notion that it's an anti-union measure, because it's not. We have a rich history of labor in this region and this part of the state. And every single member that belongs to a labor union today can still belong to that labor union if we pass right to work. All we're saying is that that individual worker ought to have a choice, and they don't under the current policy.
Didn't Butler County pass it?
Back in '78,
Well, no, I thought they tried to pass it again last year, just that.
There have been a lot of-
counties on the Arkansas line.
there have been a number of counties that have looked at the ability to do it as a local county option. I'm not aware of any specific effort in Butler County in the last few years to try to do that. We've seen that effort most in Kentucky right now. There are a number of counties in Kentucky that have tried to do it without legislative authorization. To this point, most of those efforts have been shut down by their state courts, saying that the state's got to make a choice. It's an either all or nothing choice. So I don't know that the local option is going to be one viable to a lot of places. If it was, there'd be a lot of counties that would be all in.
And then, we want an update on the stadium.
On the stadium. Well, the governor and his task force continue to try to find a way to build a stadium with your tax dollars, despite the fact that we haven't paid off the current stadium that we have. I and many others in the legislature have severe concerns about trying to publicly finance a stadium, period. But I have outright opposition and get very upset when we start trying to talk about doing that without the involvement of the legislature or a vote of the people. And that's exactly what the governor's trying to do. The governor's trying to use language from the statute back in, I believe, '89, that authorized the issuance of bonds for the stadium we have in St. Louis now. He's trying to use that language to justify an extension of the existing bonds, which means he's going to refinance the current dome and take out the extra money to build a new stadium. I don't believe he has the authority to do that under the existing law, and I think it would be wrong for him to try to commit our tax dollars without having any involvement from the legislature or vote. So where we stand right now, we have both the House and the Senate have expressed overwhelming opposition to the governor. We have said that unless he takes this through the normal process, like we go through on every other bond issue, that we're not going to appropriate money for the state. If the governor wants to try to come and make the economic case for the state's involvement in some capacity, then we'll be more than happy to hear him out. But I think there will be significant opposition to the project no matter what. Yes, sir.
What teams are you gonna get?
Well, you know what, you think we know, you think we know that question before we commit to $500 million.
Well, the Rams are going to California.
Yeah, I think it's an open question as to what the discussion, what the NFL ultimately tries to do in this market, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure it out. You've got people with a whole lot of money that are going to make that decision on where these teams are going to locate. I would love to see St. Louis. I believe St. Louis is an NFL caliber city, and I would love to see them continue to be there. But that's a different question than what we're willing to commit in terms of financial resources to make sure they stay. But to my knowledge, there's not been a single public financing deal of this scale that's ever been done without significant involvement from a team owner who has said, we want to be there. Now, it's certainly true for any of this deal to come to fruition, you'd have to have a team that was committed to coming and a team that was willing to put up about half the cost, a little over half the cost of stadium.
Probably take the Redskins, they want out of DC.
Yeah, there you go. You might have to call them something different.
Yeah,
though,
we
if they
could
move,
call them
so.
that. Also, the lobbyist problem. Could you explain why Ron is being fined $1,000 or whatever the fine is, and that he has to register as a lobbyist? Because I go up to Jefferson City and lobby my representatives and others for causes that I'm concerned about, and as far as I know, he's not getting any money for it, he's doing it on his own. So what's the difference between him and me?
The way the statute reads, as it reads right now, and I don't have the language in front of me, but the statute does not make a distinction. This is my understanding where the Ethics Commission has come down without passing judgment on whether Ron should have been fined or not. I know Ron well, believe in a lot of the causes he advocates for.